from Norfolk, Virginia. Welcome to the revolution. You know, hey, as I come up here, I want to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to come hang out with you today. You know, I get some of my best thinking done when I'm driving, right? And I was driving down here and I began to think back on my own young political career, and I thought back to 2013 when I ran for the House of Delegates, and I heard everybody say, he can't win. The establishment doesn't want him because they can't control him. We don't know what he's going to do. Nobody of color has ever represented Stafford County. And so that's why I'm so enthused to be a part of this revolution right here. As the establishment put hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars into other races, and we watched them fall one by one, and the one race that happened to win was the young black kid that represented Prince William County and Stafford County. So it touches me to come here today. It touches me to look around and see all of these people, because just like in my race, as I see in this race, we have a group of people out here who understand that it is not about me, it is not about Senator Sanders, it is not about you individually, but it is about us as a collective. That is what the revolution is. Now, hey, we've all heard it, right? But Bernie can't win. I think the polls tell us something different. I had a woman the other day tell me, she said, well, I'm a realist. Can he really get done the things that he says he's going to do? My question was, why can't he? She asked me, she said, well, they're going to block everything that he does. And I said, it doesn't matter who we put in that spot, they're going to attempt to block everything they do. So if I'm going to fight tooth and nail, knock down, drag out, fight, it's going to be for something that we want to wake up and believe in. This is about us. This is about the opportunity that we have. This is what a political revolution is. So as I stand here before you today, I want everybody to stand up, lift your voices to the rafters as we introduce our next president.
Begin by picking up right away what Michael was just saying. And I will tell you, but no other candidates for president will tell you, and it is a very important point. Not necessarily a pleasant point, not something that I feel good about telling you, but it's important that we discuss the truth. We got to deal with reality in America before we can go vote. Here's the simple truth. If I were to tell you, hey, elect me president, turn on the TV, relax, don't worry about anything, I will take care of it all. If I told you that, I would be lying to you. That's not the way it works. No president, this is important, no president, not Bernie Sanders, not anybody else, can effectively deal with the crises, the very, very serious problems we face as a nation, unless there is a political revolution in which millions of people understand that the democracy is not a football game. It's not a spectator sport you watch and somebody else doesn't. People in this community where you have such a strong military presence, you understand that people have fought and died to defend American democracy. And guess what? You are that democracy, not somebody else. You are it. Michael and Evangeline was saying is simple but true. The only way we change America is when we understand that it is not acceptable that a handful of wealthy campaign contributors, it is not acceptable that corporate America or Wall Street or the corporate media control what goes on in our country. And that means we need to radically rethink the way we do politics. You are very, very powerful people when you start flexing your muscles. And that's what we got to do right now. And that means being smart in every way you can, from the local school board to the presidency of the United States of America. Our job is to make sure that elected officials are listening to the pain of the American people. And if they are not responding, they are going to learn what unemployment is about. Our campaign is probably one of the more unique campaigns in modern American history. We have taken on Wall Street and the financial establishment. Let me tell you, they are getting very, very nervous. Over this country, in Virginia, and every place else, we're taking on the entire political establishment who just love the status quo. But yet we have people who say, you know what, status quo is not working so good for us. We started this campaign at 3% in the national polls. We've been closing that gap, and there was actually a poll that came out last week nationally which had us in the lead. We started 50 points down in Iowa, 30 points down in New Hampshire. Just a few weeks, a month ago, we were way down in Nevada. All over this country, including Virginia, we are closing that gap. And with your help, and I will tell you why our campaign is drawing large crowds, is gaining momentum all over this country. And the reason is pretty simple. And that is, number one, we're doing something very radical in American politics. We are telling people the truth. That's a very radical idea. We get a lot of trouble for telling the truth, but what the heck. Number two, we are listening to the American people. The truth is that there is a lot of pain in this country. There is pain if you're black, if you're white, if you're Latino, if you're Asian American, if you're Native American, man, there's a lot of pain there. There's a lot of pain in this country. It's pain that the media is not going to talk about terribly often. They're worried about political gossip, who's winning today and losing. But our job is to talk about the pain, to talk about the reality of American life, and to determine how we go forward. We are talking and listening to people who are making $9 or $10 an hour. And what they are telling me is, you can't make it on $9 or $10 an hour. Now you don't see this on TV much, but we are talking to senior citizens who are trying to make it on $11,000, $12,000. You know, put yourself in the place of the senior. prescription drugs need to eat well. You can do the arithmetic, but if you're trying to get by on $11,000 to $12,000, you can't do that. And you're listening to those people. All over America, and I'm sure that right here this afternoon, we are listening to young people who say, Bernie, I went to college. I wanted to get a good education. I went to graduate school. Now I'm paying off a student debt of $50,000 or $100,000. We are listening to those people, and we do not believe that people should be punished because they wanted a good education. You know, listening to women. And what women are telling me is, Bernie, it is not right that I am making 79 cents on the dollar compared to a man. And that gap is even wider for women of color. Unacceptable. Listening very closely about an issue that is an American tragedy, and we're going to have to deal with this tragedy. We're not going to push it under the rug. We are listening to the African American community who are telling us, how does it happen that in this country we have more people in jail than any other country on earth? Disproportionately African American and Latino. We are going to change that. We are listening to the Latino community and others, and other undocumented people who are saying, Bernie, we are tired of living in fear and living in the shadows. We need comprehensive immigration reform and a path towards citizenship. So essentially, what our campaign is about is not getting advice from millionaire campaign contributors. Sometimes if you read the papers, literally, the wording is, if you read the newspapers, Candidate X's campaign donors are very, very worried about this or that. Well, I don't have millionaire campaign donors. So we are able then to listen to ordinary people. And I know a little bit about this. I grew up in a family that never had any money. My dad came to this country from Poland at the age of 17, couldn't speak English, no money. So I know a little bit about the immigration experience, and I know about growing up in a 3.5-room apartment in a rent-controlled building in Brooklyn, New York. I studied economics in college, but truthfully, the major economic lesson I learned in my life as a little kid in a family struggling to make ends meet. That is a lesson I will never forget. Now, I think all of you know, if you know anything about American history, what you know is that change, real change, never comes from the top down. It always comes from the bottom up. Supreme Court renders a decision. Those are the results of the work done by millions of people in the grassroots level. that point, the only people who could vote were rich white guys. You all know that? Remember that? Yeah. So the struggle of America from the inception, from the creation of this country, was to broaden democracy, going from wealthy landowners, white landowners, to include all of our people. And my God, what a strenuous, difficult struggle that has been. The struggle for civil rights in this country didn't come from a few people on top. It came from millions of African Americans and their white allies. They said, you know what? Segregation and racism and bigotry is not what this country is supposed to be about. Struggle for workers' rights. It came when workers said, sorry, we're not going to be treated like animals. We're not going to be working 7 days a week. We have rights and we're going to form a union. Came from workers' standing. And the struggle for women's rights. We forget, you know, how easy it is to forget. 100 years ago from today where we are, not a long time in history, 100 years ago, women did not have the right to vote. They couldn't. We forget the idea of women becoming doctors or lawyers or scientists. Not a million years. Women were supposed to stay home and have babies. That was their job. But women said, sorry, not anymore. So women and their male allies struggled to say women will not be second-class citizens in the United States of America. And if we were sitting here literally 10 years ago, not a long time at all, 10 years ago, and somebody jumped up and said, you know, I think in America, people have the right to love whoever they want to love, I think, I want you to imagine this, 10 years ago, somebody said, you know, and I think people, you know, if they are gay, they have a right to be married. And I think that will happen in 50 states in America. Somebody said that 10 years ago. The guy next to him would have said, what are you smoking? Which raises a whole other issue. But how did it happen? This is what revolution is about in a sense. I go in my own state of Vermont, and I'd love you all to come up to Vermont. We're a beautiful small state. I go to the conservative parts of my state and I say, well, what do you guys think about gay marriage? For young people, by and large, it is no longer even an issue. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, Republicans were running these ugly ads. They're not running them anymore. You know why? Because they know those ads will backfire. The people of America have changed. So what's my point? Here is my point. My point is a simple point. Change takes place when people outgrow the status quo. When they say, sorry, segregation is not what this country is about. Racism is not what this country is about. Homophobia is not what this country is about. Sexism is not what this country is about. And that always takes place from the bottom up. And sometimes, let's be clear, it's always very easy to lead the parade when change takes place. Now, oh, it is not hard to talk about gay rights or civil rights. That's not hard now. 30, 40, 100 years ago, it was damn hard. And we honor those people who had the courage to talk about issues that very few people. And now we are at a moment in American history where we have got to learn from our past history, and we have got to be pushing forward in a way that makes some people very, very uncomfortable. What we have got to be talking about is that we have a government right now that, sadly enough, is not there to represent working families or the middle class, but is beholden to wealthy campaign contributors and the big money interests. And do not kid yourself. You know, when you talk about the struggles for civil rights and the struggles for women's rights, and gay rights and women's rights, this struggle that we are engaged in right now, we are taking on the most powerful people in the world. Do not kid yourself. Wall Street, and I know something about this, Wall Street has endless supplies of money, and I mean endless. You know, normal human beings say, well, you know, there's a certain amount of money we have. There is no certain amount of money. These guys have endless amounts of money to do what they want to do. They do not have me in the network. This is what we are up against. Let me give you an example. One of the areas where my opponent, Secretary Clinton, and I have a strong disagreement. No, I respect Secretary Clinton. We can have differences. Yeah. Now, an issue that is of enormous consequence to the American people, but that the media really does not cover at all. And I want you also, when we think about making change in America, understand the role of corporate media. Who owns corporate media, understands the intrinsic conflicts of interest, what will be discussed, what will not be discussed. For example, we have had for 30, 40 years a disastrous set of trade policies in America. Now, trade is not a sexy issue. And a lot of people don't even know what I mean by trade. What do I mean by trade? For the young people, let me just say this. There was a time in this country, 40, 50 years ago, when if you went into a department store, you would buy products manufactured in the United States of America. And the workers who made those products often made a good living with good benefits. If you are on an assembly line in Detroit, Michigan, producing an automobile, you know what? You made good wages, you had good benefits, and you had a good union working with you. But what has happened over the last many years is we have seen factory after factory shut down in America. Those jobs go to low-wage countries. Corporations go all over the world, figuring where they can get the cheapest labor possible. They leave Mexico, where wages are low, because they can find cheaper wages in China. They leave China, because wages get a little too high, to go to Vietnam. They are chasing the lowest wages in the world, and then they want to bring their products back into this country. Now, way back in the early 1990s, when I was elected to the Congress from Vermont, I looked at these trade proposals and I understood that American workers should not be forced to compete against desperate people making pennies an hour all over the world. I went to Mexico. I went to a region in Mexico. It's called the Maquiladora region, which is a special tax zone. And I saw the workers there who were working in these shiny, beautiful American factories. Beautiful factories. And I went to visit their homes. But you know what? They weren't living in homes. They were literally living in cardboard shacks with filthy drinking water, making pennies an hour. So what I said way back in the early 1990s, I said, wait a minute, this NAFTA trade agreement is not going to be fair to American workers and actually not fair to the people of Mexico. And I helped lead the opposition against that. First Lady, thought that NAFTA was a good idea. I was right, she was wrong. In terms of permanent normal trade relations with China, a huge trade agreement. No, I did not think it was appropriate for people in our country to be forced to compete against very low-wage workers in China. The result of that trade agreement is that we have lost millions of decent-paying jobs. And when you go shopping, as often as not, what you're buying is a product made in China. So we need, in my view, to tell corporate America that if they want us to purchase their products, you know what? They're going to have to start manufacturing those products in the United States of America. You know, and when you talk about why is it that wages are going down in America? It's not only the loss of jobs, it's what we call a race to the bottom. You know what I mean by a race to the bottom? Well, corporate America is saying, why should we pay workers in this country $20 an hour when we can pay somebody in China $1 or $2 an hour? Worker, you take a wage decrease in America. You take cuts in your health care benefits in America. You're going to have to be competitive with people in China making pennies an hour. I reject that. I want to see poor people around the world do better, but that does not mean we have to destroy the middle class of this country to make that happen. Have a big disagreement on NAFTA and China. She supported that agreement. I opposed it. But let me tell you where we are today when we talk about taking on powerful special interests. And what this campaign is about is asking everybody here, everybody in this country to think outside of the box. Don't let the media tell you that's here to here. Your job is to think about what country, what kind of country you want to live in. Don't let them define what your choices are. Today in America, we have a moral economic crisis. And that is, we have more wealth and income inequality than any other major country on earth. It is worse today in America than at any time since 1928. Our job is to say, why? Why did some nuclear attack take place in America? Was there a tornado that went all over America? What happened such that the middle class is shrinking? What's happening that we have 47 million people living in poverty? What's happening that we have massive wealth and income inequality? In America today, listen to this, really quite shocking. Top 1/10 of 1%. Not 1%, 1/10 of 1%, a sliver of our population now owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. In America today, the wealthiest 20 people own more wealth than the bottom half of America, 150 million Americans. Now, this is not talked about. Media doesn't talk about it. Their corporate sponsors don't want to talk about it very much. But if I'm elected president, not only are we going to talk about it, we're going to do something about it. I want to tell you something else when we talk about wealth inequality. You hear a lot of Republicans in Virginia, all over this country, talking about welfare abuse, poor people cheating the welfare system. You all heard that? All right. Today in America, let me set you straight on this. Today in America, one family, the Walton family of Walmart, you all heard of Walmart, this one family owns more wealth than the bottom 40% of the American people. Got it? Now, it turns out that when we talk about welfare recipients, guess what? The Walton family, the wealthiest family in America, turns out to be the major welfare recipient in our country. Bernie what are you talking about? I will tell you. Good question. Now I'll tell you the answer. Here's the answer. Think about it. This is what a rigged economy is about. This is what thinking outside of the box is about. This is what Congress, media don't want you to be thinking about. They're worried about somebody scraping by with 2 kids, cheating on welfare. Okay, here's what you got with the Walton family. They pay wages so low at Walmart that many of their workers are forced to go on Medicaid, food stamps, and subsidized housing. Now, who is paying for those food stamps, Medicaid, and subsidized housing? You are! So on behalf of the Walton family, the wealthiest family in America, I want to thank you very much for chipping in, for helping them out. I mean, they're down to their last $60 billion. And I'll tell you, it is hard to get by in these days on $60 billion. So they appreciate all of your tax dollars helping to subsidize their workforce. But I say to the Walton family, the wealthiest family in America, get off of welfare, start paying your workers a living wage. You're not thinking about this country being the wealthiest country in the world when you're working 2 or 3 jobs trying to bring in enough money to take care of your family. So here's the reality with regard to income. We got millions of people who are working longer hours for lower wages. We have people working 2 or 3 jobs. We got mom working. We got dad working. We got the kids working. We have marriages that are stressed out because people are working so hard. We have kids who do not get the attention they need from mom and dad because mom and dad are working so hard. Then, after all of that hard work, here's something else I want everybody here to know. Japanese are very hard-working people. We work longer hours than any people in the industrialized world, including the Japanese. So our people are working incredible hours, and yet it ends up that 58% of all new income generated today. Think about it. All the people, everybody here working hard, 58% of all new income goes to the top 1%. So, are you guys ready for a radical idea? I knew you would be. And that is why we are going to create an economy that works for working families, not just the 1%. That means that we are going to ask the wealthiest people in this country to start paying their fair share of taxes. That means that we understand that a $7.25 an hour federal minimum wage is a starvation wage. That means that we are going to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour. And I would hope that every man in this arena, this afternoon will stand with the women in the fight for pay equity. Let me say something else about the economy. When we talk about unemployment, what you usually see once a month on the front pages of the papers are official unemployment, which is now nationally about 5%. 5%. Anybody here believe that real unemployment in America is 5%? No. Smart group, you're right. Because there's another report that you don't see so much that comes out, which looks at people unemployed and people who have given up looking for work and people who are working part-time when they want to work full-time. Add that number together, it is close to 10%. Okay? That's a lot of people unemployed or underemployed. And now let me tell you something else, which is a national tragedy that you never hear about. Zero. Almost no discussion. And that is the tragedy of youth unemployment in this country. Youth unemployment. I asked some economists to do a study for me a while back. And I said, tell me, kid graduates high school, doesn't drop out. Some kids drop out. Kids graduate high school between 17 and 20. What is real unemployment? This is what they said. If the kids are white, 33%. Kids are Latino, 36%. Kids are African American, 51%. Unemployed, 1%. Now, if you think that tragedy, and I want you to think about it for a minute, put yourself in the shoes of a kid, 18, 19, graduated high school, trying to get his feet on the ground, trying to become independent, trying to become adult, trying to make a few bucks. Can't do it. Year after year, you can't get a job. Now, if anyone thinks there is not a correlation between that tragedy and another American tragedy, and that is that we have more people in jail, 2.2 million Americans than any other country on earth. If you don't see the connection between outrageously high unemployment rates for young people and the number of people in jail, you're missing an important point. So are you ready for radical idea number 2? What together we are going to do is invest in jobs and education for our young people, not jails and incarceration. And the other thing that we are going to do is when unemployment is so high, we are going to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure. It's our roads, Now, all of you, I think, are aware of the unspeakable tragedy taking place in Flint, Michigan today with their water system. I was in Detroit a week or so ago, and I talked to some people from Flint. I don't even want to tell you what they told me, because it is so horrific what is happening to the children that it was literally hard for me to imagine that I was hearing people in the United States of America talking about what's going on in terms of the destruction of that city. But it is not just Flint, Michigan. All over this country, we have major infrastructural problems with water, with transportation, with roads, bridges, etc. We can create 13 million good-paying jobs, putting our people to work, rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure. Say, well, Bernie, you're going to invest $1 trillion in roads and bridges and water systems. That's a lot of money. Where are you going to get the money? I'll tell you where we're going to get the money. Right now, this is how crazy this rigged economy is. Right now, you have corporations making billions of dollars a year in profit, stashing their money in the Cayman Islands, Bermuda, and in other tax havens. And in a given year, after making billions in profit, they pay 0 in federal taxes. Well, under my administration, they're going to start paying taxes. We're going to use that money to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure, and we're going to put our people back to work. Now, in this campaign, I have talked about things that are unpleasant in America because I believe that we don't go forward unless we deal with reality. What I've talked about is a corrupt campaign finance system in which billionaires, literally billionaires, are buying elections. Now, my opponent has a super PAC receiving millions and millions of dollars from Wall Street. Now that's fine, but I made a decision. I don't want Wall Street money. I don't believe in Wall Street money. We have done it in a way that is revolutionizing campaign financing in America. What people have always said, what the media says and what the experts say is, look, the only way you can raise money is go begging billionaires for money. It's the only way you can compete. I chose not to do that. And this is what we did. Listen to this, because this is really unbelievable. I never in a million years would have thought we could have accomplished this. In the last 9.5 months since we've been in this race, we have received over 4 million individual campaign contributions. From working people, middle-class people, from people trying to make it on Social Security. And you know what the average campaign contribution is? It is $27. To Wall Street, I'm not indebted to the billionaires. I am indebted to those folks who made a $27. Now, I want to tell you a story, if I might, a brief story, which kind of encompasses much of what I've been talking about in this campaign, about a corrupt campaign finance system, about a rigged economy, and about a broken criminal justice system. Here's the story. About a month ago, Goldman Sachs, you all know Goldman Sachs? Obviously you know Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs is one of the large financial institutions on Wall Street. Goldman Sachs, about a month ago, reached an agreement with the federal government. They paid $5 billion as part of a settlement package. Why did they pay $5 billion? They paid $5 billion, and by the way, other banks have even paid more. They paid $5 billion because they were selling worthless packages of subprime mortgage loans, which, as all of you know, was one of the causes for the Great Recession that destroyed the lives of millions of Americans. Okay. All right. Point number one. All right, this is the point. Short story. Stay with me. All right. Point number one, they paid $5 billion in settlement. Point number two, this is what political power is about. In the last 20, 25 years, this fraudulent financial institution has, through the revolving door, taken people from their company, put them onto the Secretary of Treasury. 2 Secretaries of Treasury, one Democrat administration, one Republican, came directly from Goldman Sachs, and a lot of other high-ranking officials in government came directly from Goldman Sachs. You go from Wall Street to government, you do the bidding of Wall Street, then you go back to Wall Street, okay? That's called the revolving door. 3, Goldman Sachs, along with other Wall Street financial institutions, pours millions of dollars in campaign contributions and speakers' fees into the political process. So what they are doing is supporting the candidates they want to support. Point number 4, and this is maybe the point that really upsets the American people the most. Today in Virginia, today in Vermont, some kid or adult gets caught with marijuana. that person will have a police record which will stay with him or her for their entire lives, which is no laughing matter, because you go around looking for a job and your employer asks you, do you have a criminal record? You say, well, yeah, I got picked up with marijuana. It stays with you for your entire life. And by the way, this becomes a racial issue as well. Because it turns out that what studies show is the black community and the white community both smoke marijuana at about equal levels. 4 times, I don't know if that's something to cheer for or not, but that's but the point to be made is that if you are black, you are 4 times more likely to get arrested for marijuana than if you are white. So that raises a whole other issue. Very important issue. I'll get to that in a minute. But right now, here's the story. You get picked up today for marijuana, you got a police record. But if you are an executive on Wall Street whose illegal behavior helped destroy the American economy, created a situation in which millions of people lost their jobs, their homes, and their life savings, you don't get a police record, you get a compensation increase, increasing your salary. That is a broken criminal justice system, and together we are going to restore justice to the criminal justice system. While I'm on the issue of criminal justice, let me just say this. Okay? Number one, talking about marijuana. Right now, in the Federal Controlled Substance Act, the rules which define drugs in America and the dangerous drugs, it turns out, amazingly enough, it's pretty crazy, is that marijuana is listed as a Schedule I drug alongside of heroin. Now we can argue, and there's a lot of studies going on about the pluses and minuses of marijuana, but nobody who's sensible thinks that marijuana equates or is the same as heroin, which all of you know is a killer drug. Now what's happened, when we talk about criminal justice, over the last 30 years, millions of Americans have police records because of possession of marijuana. In my view, that's wrong, and in my view, we should take marijuana out of the Federal Controlled Substance Act. Now, states in our country, where we have a federalism system, states can legalize or not. That's their jurisdiction. But I don't think the federal government should be about criminalizing possession of marijuana. Look, everybody here knows on another issue, and again, this is kind of common sense, because everybody agrees. If we are going to compete in a highly competitive global economy, if the young people here are going to have decent paying jobs, we need the best educated workforce in the world, correct? Truth is, 30, 40 years ago, we did have the best educated workforce in the world. Truth is, today, we do not. Truth is that today, there are hundreds of thousands of young people, some in Virginia, some in Vermont, all over this country, who have the ability, who have the qualifications to get a college degree, but they're not able to, for one reason, their families lack the funds. When we talk about public education, I want you to think about this. 100 years ago, people said public education is very important. It is. Great people helped make free public schools in America. And what they said is, look, yeah, I'm working class, I'm low income, but I want my kid to be able to get an education, not work in a factory, not work on a farm. That was a huge step forward. But the world has changed. And what a high school degree was worth 50 years ago is pretty much what a college degree is worth today. Okay? If you want to go out and get a job, by and large, there are exceptions, you need higher education. Or you need post-high school training. You want to become an electrician, you want to become a sheet metal worker, whatever it may be. That is why I believe that in the year 2016, when we talk about public education, we have got to be talking about making public colleges and universities tuition free. The equation is the absurdity that in America we got millions of people who are struggling and suffocating under outrageous student debt. Anybody here with student debt? Yeah. Now I want you to think about it. Everybody wants and believes that education is a good thing. We want you to get all of the education that you can get. And yet we are punishing severely millions of people for the crime of getting an education. We're talking about people 30,000 in debt, 50, 100, talk to a young woman who's a doctor, 300,000, dentist, $400,000 in debt. That is crazy stuff. And that is why our legislation will allow people with student debt to refinance their loans at the lowest interest rates they can find. Now, I'm a member of the Senate Environmental Committee and the Senate Energy Committee. And I have talked to scientists all over the world. And let me tell you what my Republican colleagues will not tell you, and that is that climate change is real. Climate change is caused by human activity. Climate change is already causing devastating problems in our country and around the world. I don't know if some of you just saw the article that appeared the other day, a study. Sea levels are rising at the fastest rate in thousands of years. If we don't get our act together, coastal communities are going to be underwater. We're looking at more drought, more extreme weather disturbances, more acidification of the ocean. We're looking at international conflict because people around the world are going to be fighting for water, fighting for land to grow their crops. We have a moral responsibility to leave this planet in a way that is healthy and habitable to our kids and future generations. As president, I will take on the fossil fuel industry. We will transform our energy system, create millions of jobs, moving away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. Now, throughout this campaign, I have been criticized for thinking so big. Wall Street Journal has 1 million articles. How are you going to do this and how are you going to do that? Too big, too big, too big. I don't agree. Let me give you one example. They criticize me all that they want. All over the world. You go to the United Kingdom, you go to France, you go to Germany, you go to Holland, you go to Scandinavia, you go to Canada, you go to every major country on earth, and you know what they all say? They say that all of their people, all, A-L-L, of their people are entitled to health care as a right. Not some of their people, not large deductibles, not a country in which we're paying the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs, but all of their people are entitled to comprehensive health care rights. So, let me make it crystal clear to my opponents. Opponents, listen to me. Yes, I believe that health care is a right of all people, not a privilege. Single-payer program will, in fact, lower health care costs by $5,000 for a middle-class family. And that's what we've got to do. Brothers and sisters, interests believe is that so many of our people are demoralized. So many of our young people, I read these articles every, oh, young people, they're not going to get involved in the political process. They're too busy partying and doing whatever. But this is what I want to say. I want to say to everybody here, young or old, or in between. And this is what I want to say. You don't participate in the political process. You don't stand up for your rights. I guarantee 100% that there are people out there, billionaires and their lobbyists and the campaign donors, who pray. They get down on their hands and their knees and they pray that you don't vote, you don't get involved. Because they know if you don't get involved, the big money interests will win out all of the time. They are not worried about workers making $10 an hour. They're not worried about women making 79 cents on the dollar compared to men. They're not worried about 29 million Americans not having health insurance. They're not worried about African American kids being picked up by the police illegally. They're not worried about Latinos who are living in fear and need a path to citizenship. They're not worried about seniors trying to make it $11,000 or $12,000. That is not their worry. They're worried about more tax breaks for billionaires. They're worried about more trade policies that will shut down factories in America and move to China so they can make more money. The only way we take them on is when we do not allow the Trumps of the world to divide us up. What you play off letters, black against white, male against female, gay against straight, people born in this country against people who have immigrated to this country. We are not going to fall for that. We are not going to allow them to divide us up. We're going to stand together. We are going to create a government that represents us all. Virginia, if people come out to vote, please come out to vote. Help us win. Thank you all very much.
Just under an hour.